For decades, Linux has carried a reputation that is both powerful and limiting. Powerful because it runs the world's servers, supercomputers, and infrastructure, and limiting because on the desktop it has often been described as fragmented, unattractive, or only for advanced users. But something fundamental is changing. Linux is getting a new look, and this change is not just about icons, wallpapers, or rounded corners. It is about a deep transformation in how Linux desktops are designed, how they feel to use, and how they position themselves as serious competitors to Windows and macOS. What we are witnessing right now can accurately be called a desktop revolution, and it is happening across multiple Linux distributions, desktop environments, and design philosophies at the same time. To understand why this moment matters, we need to briefly reflect on where Linux desktops came from. Early Linux desktops were functional first and aesthetic second. Desktop environments like early GNOME, KDE, and lightweight window managers focused on stability, configurability, and performance rather than visual polish. This made sense at the time. Linux users valued control, transparency, and efficiency. However, as mainstream computing evolved, expectations changed. People wanted smooth animations, coherent design languages, intuitive workflows, and visually pleasing interfaces. For a long time, Linux desktops lagged behind in these areas, not because developers were incapable, but because priorities were different and resources were limited. Fast forward to today, and the landscape looks dramatically different. Modern Linux desktops are no longer just catching up. In many ways, they are innovating beyond what proprietary operating systems offer. This transformation is visible immediately when you boot into a modern Linux distribution. Take Ubuntu Linux, for example. Ubuntu's GNOME-based desktop has evolved into a clean, modern, and consistent experience. The dock, the overview, the typography, and the animations all work together to create a system that feels intentional and refined. Canonical has invested heavily in making Ubuntu Linux visually appealing without sacrificing usability, and the result is a desktop that feels comfortable for beginners while still powerful for experienced users. Fedora Linux tells a similar but slightly different story. Fedora Linux has positioned itself as a showcase for upstream GNOME, and that decision has paid off. The Fedora Workstation desktop is sleek, minimal, and focused. It embraces modern design concepts such as gesture-driven navigation, fluid transitions, and a distraction-free workflow. Fedora Linux demonstrates how Linux can feel modern and professional right out of the box, appealing to developers, creators, and everyday users alike. The attention to detail in Fedora Linux's desktop experience signals a broader shift in the Linux ecosystem toward polish and coherence. KDE Plasma deserves special attention in this revolution. KDE Plasma has undergone one of the most impressive transformations in desktop history. Once criticized for being bloated or visually inconsistent, KDE Plasma is now widely praised for its beauty, performance, and flexibility. On distributions like KDE Neon, Ubuntu, Manjaro Linux, and Arch Linux with KDE Plasma, users experience a desktop that can look as elegant as macOS, as familiar as Windows, or completely unique depending on personal preference. Plasma's animations, transparency effects, and modern widgets showcase what is possible when open-source developers focus on both form and function. KDE Plasma proves that customization and good design are not mutually exclusive. Linux Mint also plays a crucial role in this new desktop era. Linux Mint, especially with the Cinnamon desktop environment, focuses on familiarity and comfort while still embracing modern design improvements. Cinnamon has matured into a polished desktop that feels stable, responsive, and visually pleasing. Linux Mint's approach shows that the Linux desktop revolution is not only about radical new workflows, but also about refining traditional ones. For users coming from Windows, Linux Mint offers a welcoming environment that looks modern without being overwhelming. Even Arch Linux, often associated with minimalism and manual configuration, contributes to this visual revolution. While Arch Linux itself does not impose a default desktop, the community has embraced highly refined setups using GNOME, KDE Plasma, Hyprin, Sway, and other modern environments. Arch Linux users frequently showcase cutting-edge visuals, smooth Wayland compositors, and highly optimized themes. This grassroots innovation feeds back into the wider Linux ecosystem, pushing boundaries and inspiring developers across distributions. One of the most important drivers behind this desktop revolution is Wayland. Wayland is not just a replacement for the old X11 display server. It is a foundation for smoother graphics, better security, and more responsive interfaces. As more Linux distributions adopt Wayland by default, desktops gain access to features like fractional scaling, tier-free rendering, and more consistent input handling. GNOME on Wayland, KDE Plasma on Wayland, and even lightweight compositors built specifically for Wayland are redefining how Linux desktops feel. The smoothness and responsiveness that users once associated only with proprietary systems are now becoming standard on Linux. Another key factor is the rise of modern UI and UX design principles within the Linux community. Designers and developers are collaborating more closely than ever. Projects now pay attention to typography, spacing, color harmony, and accessibility. GNOME's Human Interface Guidelines, KDE's design system, and community-driven theming standards have elevated the visual quality of Linux desktops across the board. This focus on design does not detract from Linux's power. Instead, it makes that power more approachable. The application ecosystem has also evolved to match the new desktop look. Modern Linux applications built with GTK4 Qt6 and cross-platform toolkits now feature cleaner interfaces, better scaling on high DPI displays, and consistent behavior across desktops. Applications like GNOME Files, KDE Dolphin, LibreOffice, and many third-party apps have undergone visual refreshes that align with modern expectations. Flatpak and Snap packaging systems have also played a role by making it easier for developers to distribute visually consistent applications across distributions like Ubuntu Linux, Fedora Linux, Debian Linux, and Linux Mint. Debian Linux, often seen as conservative and stability-focused, is not left out of this revolution either. While Debian Linux prioritizes reliability over cutting-edge visuals, its support for modern desktop environments ensures that users can still enjoy a refined experience. Debian Linux with GNOME, KDE Plasma, or Cinnamon can look just as modern as any other distribution, proving that stability and aesthetics can coexist. The influence of tiling window managers and hybrid desktops cannot be ignored. Projects like i3, Sway, Hyprin, and other Wayland compositors have introduced new ways of interacting with the desktop that feel fresh and efficient. These environments emphasize keyboard-driven workflows, smooth animations, and dynamic layouts. For many users, these setups represent the future of productivity on Linux. While not everyone will adopt tiling window managers, their ideas influence mainstream desktops, encouraging better multitasking and workflow efficiency. Another major aspect of this revolution is performance. Modern Linux desktops are not only more beautiful, but also faster and more efficient. KDE Plasma, for example, is often praised for running smoothly even on older hardware. XFCE, LXQT, and other lightweight desktops have also received visual updates without sacrificing performance. This means Linux can deliver a modern look on a wide range of devices, from high-end workstations to aging laptops. In a world increasingly concerned with sustainability and extending hardware lifespan, this is a powerful advantage. Gaming has also played a role in reshaping perceptions of Linux desktops. With Steam, Proton, and improved GPU drivers, Linux has become a viable gaming platform. Distributions like Pop! _OS, Ubuntu Linux, and Manjaro Linux cater specifically to gamers with polished desktops and optimized workflows. When gamers boot into a Linux system and see a visually appealing, responsive desktop that launches games seamlessly, the old stereotypes begin to fade. The open-source nature of Linux is perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of this transformation. Unlike proprietary systems, the Linux desktop is shaped by a global community. Users can influence design decisions, contribute code, create themes, and share ideas. This collective creativity accelerates innovation. When one desktop environment introduces a compelling visual feature, others learn from it and improve upon it. This healthy competition and collaboration drive the entire ecosystem forward. Importantly, this desktop revolution is not about copying Windows or macOS. Even though inspiration sometimes comes from them, it is about offering genuine choice. Linux users can choose a desktop that feels familiar, experimental, minimal, or luxurious. Ubuntu Linux offers a curated GNOME experience. Fedora Linux showcases upstream innovation. Linux Mint emphasizes comfort and stability. KDE Plasma offers unmatched customization. Arch Linux enables complete control. Debian Linux provides a stable foundation. Manjaro Linux balances user-friendliness with flexibility. Each of these distributions contributes to a diverse but increasingly polished desktop landscape. Accessibility is another area where modern Linux desktops are improving rapidly. Better screen reader support, high-contrast themes, scalable interfaces, and customizable input options make Linux more inclusive. As design improves, accessibility becomes a core consideration rather than an afterthought. This aligns with the broader goals of open-source software, empowering everyone, regardless of ability or background. The psychological impact of a modern desktop should not be underestimated. When users sit down at a computer that looks good, feels smooth, and responds intuitively, their perception of the operating system changes. Linux is no longer seen as a compromise or a tool only for servers and developers. It becomes a platform for creativity, productivity, and everyday use. This shift in perception is critical for wider adoption. Looking ahead, the future of the Linux desktop appears brighter than ever. Ongoing work on Wayland, continued refinement of GNOME and KDE Plasma, improved hardware support, and growing commercial interest all point toward sustained progress. Companies are increasingly willing to support Linux on the desktop because the user experience now meets professional standards. As more people try Linux through distributions like Ubuntu Linux, Fedora Linux, Linux Mint, and Manjaro Linux, the community grows, feedback improves, and development accelerates. This desktop revolution is not a single event or release. It is a gradual but unstoppable movement. Each update brings smoother animations, better layouts, cleaner icons, and more thoughtful workflows. Each distribution adds its own flavor while benefiting from shared advancements. The result is an ecosystem that feels alive, modern, and confident. In the end, Linux getting a new look is not just about aesthetics. It represents maturity. It shows that Linux desktops can balance power with elegance, flexibility with simplicity, and freedom with polish. The revolution has begun not because Linux suddenly decided to look better, but because the community realized that great design amplifies great software. And as this realization continues to shape development, the Linux desktop is no longer the underdog. It is a serious, compelling, and exciting choice for the future of personal computing.